Good morning. So I have a very serious question. How many are looking forward to the long weekend? Raise your hand. All right, awesome. Got two really great teams, did a lot of hard work, and we'll also get a 30-day, or I guess maybe a 60-day update. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Drake.
Well, welcome. Thank you. We're going to be talking about the Conduit PM, but before we do that, we do have a birthday in the room, and I was just wondering if we could all sing happy birthday to Jim Chesley. So on the count of three, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jim. Happy birthday to you. So without further ado, can we get the birthday boy up here? He was our process owner all week.
He's 60? Hey, it's been fun working with everybody.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks everybody. That's a great way to start that. Now I feel better.
We've got it recorded. We'll send it to you every year.
I'm sure you do. Thanks. Well, guess what? You only got one more. So, welcome everybody. This is the Conduit PM RIE, and I'd like to send out some thanks to the team. I'm going to introduce the team right now. Guys, there was a lot of hard work done this week, and it's a program that we've touched before in the many years that I've been doing this, but nothing's really never been implemented. So now I think we've got a great start on it. And I'd like to introduce the team: Luke Adams, Dave Mendoza, Jeremy Jordan, Melissa Farquhar, Tom Grable, John Lujan, Darren Truax, and Dan Wessner. And a couple of people that couldn't be here today: Kerry Reeves, Andre Hutton, and Eric Boehm. So Chris Atencio, my bad, he's not standing up, and Anthony, neither two aren't standing up. I wasn't going off the script. But anyway, I'm proud of these guys. It's not going to be an easy program, but it's going to go well. And I think it's going to be great for Denver Water. I'd like to give special thanks to, of course, our boss, Garth Rigg, Sandra Miller, for everything you do for everybody with the ergonomics and the whole 9 yards. Much appreciated. Sam Pegas, of course, always leaning on him, which his CM list is going to grow tremendously probably for a while till we get rolling. Brian Good, appreciate everything he's done for us. Mike Mercer, yeah, he does what he can for us, and we just lean on him when we can. Pam Williams for sitting with us in the VSA, and we're going to have a good, fun year together with everybody, so thanks for all your input. Gene Sherwin, thanks for helping us with the RIE and the report outs and everything to do with continuous improvement. Jack Tomish, thanks. We're going to need some stuff on trucks, and thanks for the quick response. Mark Cripps, same deal with the trucks. Everything else, Ken Erickson as well. Ernest and Alec, we're going to need you, and thanks for everything you've done for us. And we're going to be leaning on you a lot more. So thank you very much.
All right, reason for action, reading the cheat sheet without proper preventative maintenance program for conduits and the associated equipment, Denver Water is at risk of there being additional damage if and when equipment fails. What we have is a lot of valves in the system and other assets associated with the conduits that haven't been touched in possibly some of them maybe forever. So we're creating this program where we go through the entire system once every 3 years to make sure everything is inspected and operated. So it's definitely time that we get on this, and it's going to be a good program to work through everything, get everything exercised and inspected. And sorry about that. We're going to try to inspect all treated water conduits that are 24-inch and larger in the system.
Perfect. Yeah, you stay.
Okay, so this is the flow map pre-RIE. So we took all these little stickies and mapped out step by step the process, and we identified issues that we have, such as planning, coordination, and equipment, and that's that.
So Monday, we were out in the field to see how the current state works, and then we gather some numbers. On the right here is the times of the 3 individuals who did the current state, and we broke up into teams to identify and what we thought, draw it out on the current state and write some words about it. So there it is on the board, kind of hazardous, a little unplanned, a lot of technical issues, so.
What we came up with our target state is to try to come up with a standard condo isolation PM. I'll explain it in a second. The reason to do that is so we can maximize our work efficiency. A big part of that also is getting a traffic plan put together so we can plan ahead in that, and that's going to minimize some time wasted. And then we're going to prep for, it says upcoming prep, but prep for upcoming isolations. We kind of came to the conclusion that the better we prep, the more fluid it's going to go out in the field. And we kind of came up with, we're going to start, that's the water running out of a blow off. So we're going to start that first. Then we're going to have 2 trucks, one on each end, working towards the middle. And this is going to be running the whole time. That way, anything that gets stirred up while we're operating these valves will go towards the blow off and get flushed out. And then once we confirm that we have a good isolation, then keep the blow off running. These people are going to work back. And the goal right now is to have like 1 per person. We're going to try to do a lot more machine operating on these valves. And this is our plan. So like I said, plan's a big part of it, of what we came up with. Who's next?
And then part of that was our gap analysis, and that's where we took, as Chris had mentioned, we had all the ideas that were good, bad, or whatever, and then we placed them on our different areas that we thought we need the attention. We kind of broke it up into 2 as well. We had planning and scheduling, and then we also had the actual work in the field. So we've got 2 systems here that we're working currently on to try and make this process flow a lot easier.
It's me again. Obviously, I'm not gonna, I think I need a magnifying glass to read all this out, but what we did is we came up with problems or concerns that people noticed on our first isolation, and then we asked why were those problems occurring, and then we kind of went down the list, why did that happen, what caused that, and then we went to our root cause, and then what we did is if we did this to whatever the problem was, then this is what we can expect to be more efficient or to work differently or better.
So after we were able to obtain all that information, we created a new process flow to create standard work. We created 2 plays, a play 1 and a play 2. We broke up in 2 groups. The first group was able to create, like I said, 2 plays. Play 1 was to create a PM program for the exercising of our valves, and the play 2 was to create a program for the actual conduit isolations that actually coincide with our conduit outage schedule that we have currently. The other group was able to also go off of those play 1 and 2, and they created standard work for the operators in the field, what they should be doing from A to Z. And this whole process of creating the standard work is really going to help us be more efficient, from begin time to end time when we do these events.
So we went out on Monday and Wednesday to do our time observations, and Monday we did a simple isolation, 2 trucks, 3 people. Kind of timed it out, wasn't quite as efficient as maybe we could be. We came back on Wednesday, did another time observation, and we still did the same 3 people but 3 trucks, and that proved to be a little bit more efficient, and that's kind of the route we're going to take and gather that information and go from there.
So this is a standard work procedures we came up with. Like we said before, we've got 2 plays. We've got the play 1, which is just for exercising, and then play 2, which is for the actual isolation. And then we've got the planning on this side, and then the actual operators on this side. And basically the plan is to plan. It's going to be heavy on planning, heavy on choreographing. But one of the things that became obvious while we were working on this is that it's really complicated. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. There's a lot of different things that you need to do during the isolation. So we came up with a really good plan, but it's also basic and flexible so that it can change when need be, because both times in the field we had an issue that required a little bit of flexibility to fix.
So we came up with process control boards that capture the metrics. So one of the key things is scheduling. So when we look at planned work, and then we look at actuals. And the key thing on that is whatever you plan, you want to see if it actually is what you end up doing that day. And the whole thing on this board is just purely to get better at planning. And then you figure out if it didn't, you do the actual as you planned. Then you figure out, well, why? Sometimes it's not that work group. Sometimes other work groups affect to that. So you got to be careful on that. Maybe go talk to those people and see if you can come up with a better plan. The other board for Danny is just to keep track of the conduits on how we're going to keep track of the metrics. And then talking about metrics, we did hit the safety improvements this time. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do, but it tends to go, but we end up hitting it this time. When we talk about quality, one of the things that we thought about is if you're looking at the whole system, you know, you got, 150 some conduits out there, and then you got several isolations on each conduit. So when they go to run these PMs out there, we thought a good quality metric would be when you get a shutout, that's good. When you don't, because there's a broken asset out there, then we ought to do that ratio against that. So our goal was to have 100% isolations, but things do break. There's things out there that are broken that we don't know about. So this would be a good quality metric. And then the system demand, we got 8 isolations that they need to do. And that's based off of the available time that is a yearly time. Danny has, in that group, has a whole bunch of other work that they need to do. So we got to capture all the work that they do in the other programs before we can actually say their available time is a year for 3 people, because it may not be that. And then the productivity is, you know, just based off of hours to do one asset, one isolation.
So part of the completion plan, we're going to add some things that we need. We're going to upgrade the light bars on 2 of our vehicles to a longer bar. It's a lot more visible in the street. Handheld radios, going to get a couple more radios so communication is much better in the field. We're looking at some swing arm operators and upgrading our existing hydraulic operators that we have on our trucks at this time. The swing arm operators give you a lot more versatility for reaching out to different locations when you have the vehicle parked. It's going to be a nice tool to have as an addition to the trucks. Some other tools, impact wrenches, sockets, and grinders. We're going to add those, maybe not to each truck, but have them available in case you need those in the field. They'll be there. We don't have to borrow them from somebody else. M-Field, Maximo, and EMAP training for the crew. We're going to verify field crew laptops are up to grade. We've been having some problems with the signal out in the field, so we're trying to get those issues resolved. We're going to make sure everything's on the truck. Right now we found out we need 16 cones per truck. Going to follow the rules and regulations that the city and county of Denver has in the traffic plan that Denver Water came up with. And it's called a pre-flight checklist. We're going to go over the trucks every day and make sure that all the tools are on the trucks before we go out into the field. That way you don't have to do any return visits.
So here are some of the lessons learned and some of the insights that we came up with during our RIE event. We learned that there's a lot of work that's done out in the field and how it ties into so much of the other work that's done within Denver Water's system. Safety, it's the biggest driving force in decisions. Change is continuous. It never stops. It takes a group to create solutions. It's all in the planning, and everybody has to be flexible. These are just a few of them. We felt that we will improve the future outages. Optimistic of the new process, that we covered all of the known safety issues. They're feeling good about the guys that will carry out this plan, like the communication with the other departments such as T&D, and a sense of relief. Expected it to be difficult. And in relation to Denver Water's core values, for vision, complete communication can enhance productivity. Passion, do the best to your ability and work toward that goal. Excellence is what we all strive for. Integrity, the team cares about doing things right. Passion, everyone wants to do their best. Respect, listen to all suggestions. And in honor of Aretha Franklin today, RESPECT.
So once again, I'd like to thank the team. I was proud of everybody, and the event really went well. So, and we kind of had a blast from the past. It was a little hot out there on Monday, and Tom got a little tired, so he had to sit down and take a break. And I realized that I can still operate a valve if I needed to. It's been many years. But anyway, I'd like to say thanks again, and especially Melissa and a group of a bunch of good guys, and it was entertaining. So thanks again. So I'm going to open up. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So Luke was talking about the trucks that were running and the light bars are on. My question is the idling policy in effect? And are we concerned about that when we're running our trucks with the light bars?
It can't be, due to the fact that our trucks also run on, they have power takeoff units, so the motors have to be running to operate the equipment on the truck. So that's one thing that was addressed way back when, but when the trucks, they're working trucks, we can't shut them off.
So idling policy has an exception for that?
Correct. So, anybody else? Yes, ma'am?
I would not be, sir, first off, y'all did a great job. So awesome. And I would not be doing my job if I didn't point out, can you go back a couple pictures? Right there. So if you look at the picture to the far left, that is not good body mechanics. Twisting and bending at your spine is not good body mechanics. So I just wanted to point that out.
I think just I think in the last defense was actually, that was the morning stretch. He just got one guy in the photo. See, but normally 20 years ago, that would have been Tom waiting on me to get the conduit shut down. So, it's just 20 years later. So, yes, sir, Phil.
Will you be doing the big, will you be doing the big valves more so during the non-load season, or you trying to do it during the load season?
That's basically our load season and off season and construction season. We're basically, it's all gonna be in the planning part of it. So basically, we're not, to answer your question, we've still got a load season, we've got things like that, of course, but it's all gonna become part of the planning. So if we can do it, we're gonna do them.
Okay.
Like I said, we'll all be involved in the planning process of it. So to answer your question, we're gonna be operating a lot more conduits. So, yes, sir. Yes, sir. All conduits. So, Pamela?
I know you guys have a plan, Dan, you're going to do the training. Do you guys see that'll take a while, or like is this going to be a way different technique, or do you feel like it'll be pretty quick? What's the plan for the training, for the standard work, in the new way you're doing it?
Training for all the individuals to go out. I think we're worked through everything. We're worked through everything. We've come up with a different technique with different personnel on trucks, and I think it's going to work. The biggest thing is now is just gathering all the information that we need as far as times, see how everything's going to work out. But I think we have everything in place. Are you talking about the computer training?
There was a training from there, I guess, and maybe I don't understand the current state, but you guys heard of like the standard work, like, oh, we're going to do the 2 trucks from the inn instead of how we used to do it. So like training people the new way, if you will, the new technique.
The new technique, yeah. Usually we had 2 people per truck, and we thought maybe it's more efficient to split that up a little bit and somebody can assist somebody else. And so still kind of fine-tuning that, but I think we're definitely headed in the right direction.
People will be able to come up to speed pretty quick.
Every one of his crew was in it.
Oh, got
So they were in this whole process of development, and so as far as training for that, they were there, so.
Oh, so you guys are pretty good.
Anybody else?
You guys have been planning getting assets back online, I think it's great, and how long that will take. So if you had a section isolated, and worst case scenario, you could break some, maybe the worst case, maybe break the valves in, or shear off about getting the assets back online, and how that's being that distribution.
Correct. Yes, it's really nothing that we haven't done before. I mean, we're just going to be exercising more. So yeah, there's already plans in place. I mean, especially. Sorry. Yes, there is a plan. We've had a plan in place. It's basically if we bust a line, especially on a large valve that gets broken closed or partially closed, it's immediately set into motion with T&D. We're all one group now, so there are plans for that. We have some other things that we're going to work through, but yeah, before we've never had any problem with getting stuff back online, because there's stuff that we get dependent on the size of the pipe, the make of the pipe, things like that. But yeah, there's plans for that.
Hey Jim, so plan on getting the annual vehicle street permits for each truck. I know when we operate now is downtown. You have the city inspectors come by and we've had some issues with that. So.
That was also discussed this week, and the placards all came out, and it's going to be back in motion again. They're working out some issues with the city right now, trying to get a blanket, some kind of blanket permit. But yes, it's been discussed. Jason, I know you have a question.
Jim, I'm just wondering if you feel as old as you look.
Okay. I did. All right. We're good.
Thank you.
We have our Northwater team up next, so I'll hand it over to Troy here.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Troy Beyer. I am a lean design consultant with Simpler, and I help guide a team to this week through what we call an FMEA process, or a failure modes and effects analysis process. And the team will talk a little bit more about that as we go forward, but it was a long week trying to think about potential failure modes of how the Northwater treatment plant could go wrong. And I'm just going to hand that over next.
So to introduce our team, we have Tom Beyer, who just introduced himself, Tad Kogan, myself, Shelby Howdicke, Steve Holder, Carlos Quinones, Tyler Johnson, Andrea Song, and then we have Mike Lefevre that are here. Those who could not attend, we have Tom Mercer, Jennifer Gelmini, Russ Plackey, Casey Clark, Adam Marquez, and then we have Brandon Billy.
Yes. Special thanks to the water treatment plant staff. We pulled a lot of water treatment people into this event this week. Kind of short-term notice, so appreciate them coming in. I know they don't usually like to get those kind of notices short-term, so sorry, Nicole. Where you at? Did she leave? Okay. Oh, okay. So also wanted to thank that guy right back here in the quarter, Peter McCormick. He's been a huge supporter of these events throughout the year for the North Treatment Plant. So he's basically sat down with me and some people at the beginning of the year and said, I want to take whatever you guys have as far as your vision and what you guys believe in and think that we need to incorporate into this design phase. And he's allowed us to make that a reality. So I want to thank him. I want to thank Bob Mahoney, and I also want to thank Tom Rude for allowing us to do this. So a lot of times when you pull something like this early into the design, it tends to maybe slow it down a little bit, maybe bring some questions up about redesign. So big support back there, so I really appreciate those guys. So the reason for action, we want to emphasize proper asset management within the design phase of this new plant. So I'm not going to read through all this, but realistically, what we want to do, we want to design this plant to be highly reliable. So when you've got a reliable plant, then you curb a lot of the operation and maintenance costs very long-term into the future throughout its entire life cycle. So that's really important. Also, a reliable plant is a very efficient plant. It's a very productive plant for Denver Water, but the most important thing, a reliable plant is a very safe plant. So we want to capture that very early in the design, and this is the best opportunity to do it. So what is an FMEA? Troy, mentioned that it's a failure modes effects analysis. So what we primarily did was we looked at a list of critical systems initially. So we broke that down, and Steve will talk to you a little bit about that on the next slide, but we went into each of those systems and we looked at the overall function. So there's two parts to that. The overall purpose of the system or the subsystem, and then what performance criteria do we need to adhere to. So once we have that, we look at every potential plausible way that that system or subsystem could fail. So we had a lot of cross expertise in the room, cross-functional expertise, and we come up with numerous failure modes from those systems and subsystems. So from that, we then go into the actual effect from that failure. So what is the effect on the overall objectives of this plant? We took into consideration things like health and safety, environmental impact, impact to production. We also looked at single points of failure. So again, making sure that we're building reliability and efficiently. We broke that into what is the overall severity, what is the detection, and then we also looked at the likelihood that that actual failure mode would actually happen. So when you combine all those together, you come up with a risk probability number, and then that kind of identifies your most probable and dominant failure modes throughout the entire process. So that's what an FMEA is.
So the team, we had to have somewhere to start with. So a criticality list that Tad was talking about was looked at by a smaller team. And basically, some of the things they looked at, they had to rank things of the most severity so we could look at, knowing that we probably in a week's time frame couldn't get through all the systems. So we did it was set up a criticality list, the most prevalent, the most things that had the single point of failure, health, safety, probability, production, all those things. And then a list was created so that we then went from the highest to the lowest and tackled as many as we could through the week.
So the first number of the three numbers is the severity number. So they gave us a system, and then we went through the different failure modes, and then what effect that failure mode would have on the treatment plant itself, and then gave them a rating of 1, no effect, 2, minor inconvenience to staff, 3, moderate, possible disruption to plant performance, 4, high, plant shutdown, and 5, catastrophic. Regulatory, health, and safety impacts.
Next one we did was occurrence based on the severity. How often do these systems tend to go down? And we gave it a rating of 1 through 5. 1 being no documented failures, 2 being low, this happened maybe once or twice. 3, it's moderate occurrence, few and far between. 4 is occasional failure, and 5 as very high repeated failure. We see it usually all the time.
Next, we did detection and risk priority number. Detection essentially goes down into how quickly are we going to notice that this asset has failed or this system has failed. And that was one thing that was really difficult for the team, was staying at system level, not diving into the assets and using pumps as a failure, where you can't just look at the pump. We had to look at it from asset level. And so for the detection, what we found out is that we're relatively good at detecting things at Denver Water. It kind of kept the risk priority numbers down. In the overall scale, we could hit 125, and the detection was one of the things that kept us fairly low. But as far as detection ratings go, if it's caught immediately, it was given a 1. If it's caught within an operational shift, 2. Within 24 hours, a 3. And hard to detect by operational staff, 4. And then not detectable by operational staff was a 5.
So here is where we put all of that together and totaled them. And there was a bet made at the beginning that we were only going to get through 5 subsystems. This team worked really hard. We tackled about 3 to 5 a day, and we started with the highest, but we got through 23 subsystems total. We started with the most critical, like chlorine, the inlet vault to the disinfection contact pipe where you could lose residual and downstream. So we kept methodically going through. We came out when you talked about, occurrence and all of that. Sometimes, if that failure was catastrophic and it was ranked a 5, but the occurrence was so unlikely and it was a 1, it actually didn't rank as high as we might have thought. But some that might not have detection and it was catastrophic and it was a high occurrence, obviously ranked really high. So it really got us to prioritize what the highest level scores were. And the most important thing I feel that came out of this is it really gave us an action item list. We identified who was going to cover it, and was it a design item? Did we need to add something to the design? Did it impact asset management and additional PMs we should be doing on equipment to prevent failure? Do we need more monitoring added? So anyway, it gave us a really good game plan. SOPs, training that we could add to specifications up front. So I found that invaluable in this whole process.
So what does this mean for the future? Moving forward, it improves asset management, improves design, prevention failure modes, prioritizing maintenance strategies, identifying and developing training SOPs. Asset management essentially owns this system, and it's up to us, the operators, or treatment, water quality and treatment, and the rest of the stakeholders to implement it. And then it also helps the organization manage risk. So it highlights those areas that need attention that might have been overlooked otherwise.
So you guys can read through these insights. I won't go through every one of them, but I think the big takeaway from this week was, when you initially come into a process like this, you automatically assume that this is going to be critical, or this piece of equipment or system is going to be the most at risk for this facility and its objectives. That a process like this will actually uncover things that you didn't normally think of, and some of those things that you thought were more dominantly going to failure or have an overall consequence to the plant might not be. It might be something over here. So I think it uncovered a lot of treasure. I think it's a very, as you guys can attest, it's a very brain draining process. We were exhausted at the end of each day. So Dave, you've probably been through quite a few of these. It's a very, very exhausting process. So my hat's off to this team. They worked really hard. They got fed really well. So I think that really helped kind of restore the brain cells afterward. So really appreciate all the hard work from everybody. Open it up to questions. Troy, do you have anything to add?
The only one thing I want to add, and I've heard Tad say this, so I just want to make sure we emphasize it. I think teams do a really good job thinking about how we want to operate plants, but this is really a time to pause and think about how it could potentially fail, and that's what Tad kept alluding to. I didn't want to miss that. I think that's a really important insight. So how could it break? How could we fail to deliver high quality water? It's just a little different way to think about it that helps bring new insights out. So that's it. Questions?
Yes, sir.
In your design phase, is solar or wind being considered for that plant since it's open space and you have access to be able to do something?
That would be a question for you, because you've been involved in it from day one.
Yes, solar panels are, so, yeah, we're trying to be, we have looked at going off the grid and taking it extreme, but, so the question was asked, are solar panels and wind being considered in the design? And yes, solar panels are for lower voltage, but obviously they don't produce as much. We also have hydro, renewable energy. Renewable energy is important here. We tried to push this project off the grid, but it was probably, a $40 million adder, and it had never been done. So at this time, that's no longer on the table, but we have certainly looked at sustainability and energy savings throughout.
Any other questions?
I meant bleach.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
sodium hypochlorite. No, we will be using sodium hypochlorite in this.
Thanks for paying attention.
But I meant the chlorine residual, so yeah. I just, sometimes you don't want to go into too much detail up here because people drive past over for different levels.
Any other questions? Dave, yes, sir.
So the team did a lot of work. I'm assuming there's a spreadsheet somewhere or something that captures all this. My question is, what is the plan to not let it get stale? So how do we revisit it at some frequency to make sure that, yep, we're still on board or that sort of thing? Because you can set those things and put them on the shelf and not follow up. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, through the week, Troy did develop that spreadsheet for us, but what we also did is we developed recommended actions. So we looked at who the overall responsibility would fall upon to get these mitigation tasks taken care of. So some fell within asset management, so I have to ensure that those get moved forward. Some of those fell within water treatment and quality. Some of those fell within the design team. This will go back to the design team, and they'll say, we'll look at adding an alarm in here, or we'll add an extra 10 feet of this, or we'll take away this. So we put that in the design phase and let the design engineers take a look at it and say, this is doable, or if it's not doable, then we got to come up with some type of strategy later on to mitigate it. So does that answer your question? Okay. Nicole?
Yeah, I want to kind of answer his question.
Okay.
So we're starting to look at a transition within water treatment quality that will focus heavily sections on asset management teams.
Okay.
So I think what I was going to say, all of you in our work, is you're going to help me on those asset management teams look at equipment and all this. So thank you. And I think that will also kind of be used in how we look at that.
Thanks, Nicole. Any other questions? It's a pretty good turnout for Friday before a holiday. So either A, you guys are out of PTO, or B, you've just got too much work to get caught up on. So, yeah, that's true too. Also wanted to thank Troy. Troy's been back and forth a lot throughout this year for these events and been helping us facilitate. And I've been working with him to kind of get a lot of the pre-stuff done before the events. So he's been a huge help on the phone with him and meetings and stuff and a lot of back and forth travel. So he's been a real big help for us. So really want to throw out some thanks to him. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Last but not least, we have Jason Feinhout. Jason, we are scheduled to be out here at 10, so just keep that in mind. Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. Thank you guys for coming. Okay. Oh, yeah, thanks. All right, I'm Jason Feinhout. I currently work in water efficiency, and I am your drought preparedness coordinator in the organization. Little plug there. Okay, so let's talk about the RIE. Conditions of work area RIE. This happened 3 months ago, and the reason this is our first follow-up with you guys, and the reason for that is that there was a lot of moving parts that we had to put into place, and we're basically going off of quarterly reports with the customer. So 30, 60, 90 wouldn't have been a good way to do it, so instead we're going to do 90, 180, and 270. So you'll see me back here a couple more times. All right, let's talk about the team first, and then we'll talk about what this was all about. We had an amazing team that was up there. You'll see those smiling faces. Got Kelly Jackson, Alexis Avila, Raylani Smith, Jake Morton, Eddie Hernandez, myself, Aldo Pilateri, and John Rodriguez. And we had the wonderful Gene Sherwin as our facilitator. Thank you. And so it worked out really well. We had a great week, and we were able to come up with some wonderful ideas. So what were we addressing? So what we found in the quarterly reports as they were coming out with the customer care quarterly reports is that satisfaction levels with street work, and specifically talking here about T&D street work. We're not talking about contract work or engineering projects, things like that. Really pipe replacement, and then dabbling a little bit into hydrants and meters and things like that, but mostly into pipe replacement. So satisfaction levels were dropping with that work. And so one of the things that we were looking at is that as to what customers were saying were the big reasons. And the big ones they were saying were not the actual work itself. They were complimentary of our crews. It was the notification process to tell them what to expect. And unfortunately, a lot of them felt like the notification process wasn't preparing them for, the trial and tribulation of having a pipe replacement in front of your house. It is an ordeal. I mean, we're ripping up the street, putting things down. So what we wanted to do is try to rework the way that we inform customers of what's going to happen, and then also have a way to follow up afterwards to let them know next steps. So what we decided to do is to reinvent our notification process. Basically have more information up front for them, and also have follow-up, especially about landscaping, when streets will be paved, when we're going to pull up the barriers in front of the storm drains. All of these things people think we just leave or forget. We get a lot of calls on that. So the way we decided to test on how successful we were on our process was two ways. Number one, the satisfaction percentage with street work in each quarterly survey. The second way was actual number of calls that came in specific to street work and specifically complaints. So let's look up at our targets here. Initially we started out, I said it would be the last quarterly report, so it would be back in December. You'll see that we were at 49% satisfied, and our goal is 75% satisfied. Now the latest quarterly report which came out, and I really want to emphasize this, the latest quarterly report goes up to June 31st. So anything that's happened in the last 2 months is not captured yet inside of the customer's response. And so this is really just the very initial turning of the boat, if you will. And so we are 6% above the target rate we thought we would be at 90 days. Initially, we thought it would take a little bit of a dive because we're switching up our process and giving more information and basically telling people it's going to be bad. We thought there'd be an initial downturn as we get the process in place, and then it'll go up. So we were above where we thought we'd be. Now we're also above on complaints. We're up 9 over what our estimate was. We were hoping to be at 78 overall calls in the quarterly report. We were at 87. However, also to factor in that this time of year, this report took place from April, May, and June. That's some of the heaviest months of pipe work that we do in the organization. Once you get into the winter months and the fall months, it drops off significantly. So although it went up, we're still comfortable with the overall, what we think the yearly average will be. Yes, Pam?
Are you tracking complaints off of the survey that comes back in complaints, or complaints calls you take?
Yeah, so really good point. It's actually complaints on the survey, the actual numbers of complaints that are coming in on that. Okay, so you'll see down here we finished up everything, but one point down here is that we were running a little bit late on distribution of the customer job. Public Affairs was phenomenal in rewriting the notifications, getting them out, changing up our pictures and our message. But then actually getting them into the print shop and out to the field, and then having the field crew switch over took a little longer than expected. And so we actually didn't start doing that until about 15 days before the end of the latest quarterly survey. I'd say 15 days afterwards. So the last quarterly survey would have a little bit of our new customer care touch points and website touch points, but the notification process won't really be seen until the next quarter, and we'll be able to see what our efforts have yielded. Okay, some insights. So I'll let you guys read these, but I'll just kind of give a little explanation. So on the first one, it's taken longer for crews to put out our new notification process than expected. But we feel like that's just because we still have a variable process that's going on with our crews. They're still learning this new thing. As we go through this and as we start eliminating the variability and we get a consistent process, times will come down to where we expected. And the second one, of course, as you know, good change is a consistent push and a gradual change. And that's what we're seeing here. The extra effort you put in with support, appreciation, and everything like that can sometimes seem like it is unneeded and unproductive, but at the end of the day, that's how you get your successful process in. That's some of the things we've learned with talking with the crews and continue to support them. Our marketing team and our design team here at Denver Water and print shop team are phenomenal. What's amazing about them is the process, if you guys have ever used Workfront, the process to get a project designed and edited and implemented, actually they do a lot of the work without a lot of the process. It's a very, very streamlined process that they have. And our staff are flexible, passionate, always ready to help. Except for Steve Broom, I guess, but other than that, pretty much all of us. And so, excellence, we feel like we're on our way. Passion, we all have excellence, great attitude from the field staff, public affairs, those folks that had to implement this. We will enhance the customer experience through the better notifications. And, you know, we had a lot of, so we came out of the RAE, and there's a lot of expert opinions from our experts who are coming in and attempting to tweak the methodology, and everyone was very respectful, and we were able to really kind of just change little things that made a big difference in the end. Okay, so I'll have more for you in the next quarter with the newest report, but I would love questions. Mr. Duran.
Are we providing a survey after we complete the work to the customers rather than it coming randomly into the call center? So we're done if we do a pipe replacement job, 2 or 3 blocks, provide a survey to all those customers after we're done with that work. Are we getting feedback from them?
Yeah, so actually, and I'll let Pam detail a little bit more. I'll give the general I know. But it's twofold. If people have complaints and they call in, those are marked as complaints inside of the system and they're addressed at that point. But then also the survey goes out and asks people how work was. And Pam, you want to detail?
So we send out surveys to those people. Not every single person has to do a random poll. I don't know what the exact numbers are. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
So basically on a pipe job, Raylani gives us these 2 blocks. We send everybody that's around the perimeter of those 2 blocks. So that's the quarterly survey. If you guys remember from our biannual survey, that's the random sample of just 16,000 random customers. But these quarterly surveys are targeted, people that we know we touched, know that we've impacted.
All right. Any other questions?
Can we do that
2-2.
with contractors that we contract with? Get surveys from them.
Yeah, good question. So this RE doesn't deal with that. However, that aside, yes, we do our surveys that also go to customers who are part of contract projects, right? Although not all of them. Again, it's a distributed sample around the customers.
Contract. What their impact is to
So like Mike's the contractor, and then what we're surveying him, what you're saying. Yeah, contract job, yeah.
Mike's the contractor for the work. You got to check the way you find contractors. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
More or less complaints on landline replacement jobs?
Yeah, great question. Actually, I don't know the details on that one. I can look up and find out for you. Do either of you know off the top of your head if we've had more or less complaints on service line replacements?
I just was shocked out in my field that people are complaining that they're getting a new path. But we're tearing up the street a little more. And then
People are super sensitive about the sidewalk and asphalt.
Mhm.
Like, I would say sometimes more than landscaping.
I agree.
And those are tough because there's only so much we can control, right? We submit a permit, street cut, and we're like, we can't right away from the city. Or now we're in the city and they're putting notices about the sidewalk, and so people are already getting cranky about that, but yet it's customer's responsibility. So yes, I mean, there's a lot of sentiment around pretty serious, like you just gave me the whole line and how much this is, you realize how big deal it is. So we actually discussed some And some were just like, yeah, that's great, but what about my mulch bed or whatever?
Right. Thank you, Pam. Appreciate that. And one clarification, I realize I think I misunderstood a question. Earlier when you were asking where those numbers are coming from, so we do all the numbers quarterly. The percentage of people that we had, that's from the survey, but the number of complaints are people just calling in on their own. But it's per quarter. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. So I have one more after this too, just so you guys don't applaud me just yet. I mean, you can if you want, but there is another one real quick that I did. Yes?
I was just wondering, are your surveys electronic or paper, and what's your return rate?
Oh, wow. I'm going to defer again to Mike and Pam there.
No, I don't know exactly what the return rate is on the quarterly ones. I think it's right around like 11-12%, which is kind of industry standard, so it's okay.
And is it paper, electronic? I think it's...
Send it out paper, but there's links that you can go on there and fill it out. Yeah.
All right, all right. Okay, oh no, hold your applause. We'll go on to the next one. So this is just a real quick update that I wanted to do. Christy Palmore was a wonderful facilitator for a Voice of the Customer event that we did as part of this analysis of if Denver Water needs a centralized policy program. And when I say policy, I don't mean internal policy, HR policy, personnel policy, things like that. What I'm talking about is external policy, lobbying the state legislator to pass laws, actually going out and changing the way that processes are done, those types of external policies. And what we did, we had a great Voice of the Customer event. We had people coming kind of in and out throughout the day. I think we had a total of 14 people. And I just wanted to kind of give you an update on what we found. So number one, people did agree that there is a little bit of silos when it comes to policy research, policy lobbying, and that type of thing. And so we did notice that there are also then redundancy of efforts and a little bit of a block on how fast you can move. So what we came out of it is we need to do more research on best practices on other organizations, how they, as an organization, create policy, impact policy, react to policy, and change policy. And then also, we, after we're done researching, we want to start with a pilot program, push it out to see if it actually is beneficial. This is the really important part. It may turn out that we don't actually need it, but we want to try to see, and then at that point we'll reevaluate. And if it turns out that a centralized program for everybody wasn't needed, no worries at all, then we'll just kind of go from there. One of the big parts we want to focus on, there's 3 of them. Stakeholder relationships are huge when it comes to policy. We have to have partners outside of the organization to work with if we want to affect change. Communication with our internal stakeholders and external, again, is critical. If people don't know in the organization what kind of policy is out there, then it's really possible that their position or their knowledge can't be utilized into actually trying to get that policy to pass. A lot of times you have policy folks and then you have implementation folks, and those implementation folks have just as much knowledge inside of this idea of building policy. So we need to reach out more and really kind of prep before we go into a policy change. And then board approval. Policy advances have to have board approval. The process right now is a little bit lengthy and semi-ill-defined, and so we want to try to streamline that a little bit more. And again, we think a centralization will do that. Ideal state, we're going to make sure that every policy that is attempted to be put into place connects with our core mission, that it's actually something that needs to be done. And then we also want to see about having all these different folks that are doing it themselves to basically have possibly a half-staff person that would be able to coordinate everything in a centralized process. Again, that's just what we're going to try coming up here, and we'll see if it works. Next steps. We're going to put together these Voice of Customer findings. We've just kind of done a light analysis. We're going to get with Christy here next week and to put in more detailed analysis and do a fishbone. And then we will design a draft pilot program to put out there to see if a centralized policy program is good for Denver Water. Any questions on that one? Oh, that's fun. Yeah. Okay. Now I have 5 more minutes, so I was hoping to tell you guys.
All right. Before I let you go, real quick question: How did it feel today? Feel good? You guys want to be part of this? So I think we have need for fresh eyes and that sort of thing. So even if there's not an activity in your particular area, there's other areas in the enterprise that need your fresh eyes. Participate with a team making Denver water better every day. Have a great weekend.